UNLV is supposed to be competing for a spot in the college football playoff, and they still don't know who their starting quarterback is. The football season's almost here. UNLV is actually playing in the biggest game of the first week of the season. It's great. This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. Here we go. It is the first game week of a UNLV football season, which means nobody knows who the starting quarterback is. Somehow this happens every single year. But Dan Mullen is not named a starting quarterback. He said that both Jackson Arnold and Alex Orji are going to play in the first game of the season. And I do not understand why UNLV football coaches cannot pick quarterbacks. They can't do it. Every single year, there is either a competition that goes into the season or there's a starting quarterback named, and then we get like 3 or 4 weeks in, and it's clear the backup's better. That the guy that got named the starter wasn't actually good. I mean, last year, Dan Mullen just did this. He could not decide between Alex Orji and Anthony Calandria. They both played in the first game. If I remember correctly, they were both on the field for the first snap of the first game. And eventually, Calandria outplayed Orji and became the starter. Orji got hurt in there as well. But we went into last season not knowing who the starting quarterback was. The other fun example has been when a quarterback is named the starter, but actually is the worst quarterback on the team. Not worst, but is not as good as the backup, right? Barry Odom had Matthew Sluka as his starting quarterback. Sluka quits the team, says, hey, they're not giving me the money they promised me. But then we see Malik Williams take over, and he was better, right? Matthew Sluka was fine, not the greatest passer. Sluka was fine, though. They beat Kansas with Sluka. But Malik Williams was a better quarterback. And it's just insane how this happens over and over at UNLV, that they just cannot have a coach name a starting quarterback and that actually be the better starting quarterback. So instead, we get every single year, well, who's the starting quarterback going to be? Nobody knows. And I have some theories. Now, there have been a lot of different situations, a lot of different scenarios, right? Basically the first one for me when I moved to Las Vegas, started covering UNLV, was Tony Sanchez and Armani Rogers, right? Sanchez, no, they didn't play him as a freshman, but Sanchez basically bet his entire UNLV tenure on Armani Rogers being awesome, right? He was a highly ranked recruit. UNLV got him. It's clear there was a lot of talent. Extremely fast, extremely big, could throw the ball the whole length of the field, right? The talent was there. The accuracy was never there, and he just was never a good enough passer. But Sanchez didn't really recruit quarterbacks to challenge Armani Rogers. It was just, this is Armani Rogers' team. So he was starting no matter what. It did not matter if the backup was better. Sanchez was going to start Armani Rogers. And I think some of these other cases, there's a head coach who is afraid to make the wrong decision and desperately wants one quarterback to look better than the other in an actual game. So everyone sees why the coach ultimately made the decision he made, and he's not on the hook for evaluating it, right? And I think, is that what's going on right now? Because let me play out a negative hypothetical for you. Let's say Dan Mullen had named Jackson Arnold the starter. Jackson Arnold starts, plays poorly, UNLV loses to Memphis. Unless he's just Nathan Peterman, you're probably going to start him in the second game, right? You're probably not changing your conviction on that for game 2. But then they play Hawaii. Jackson Arnold plays poorly again. They lose to Hawaii. They're 0-2 and have lost to 2 teams that potentially, they're second or third tier, but are potentially group of 5, group of 6 playoff contenders. Then you go to Alex Orji, and Orji is clearly better, and UNLV wins a bunch of games, and we look back and say, well, UNLV would be in the playoffs if Dan Mullen had just made the right decision at quarterback to start the year. Instead, you let them both play, and you let everybody see the battle and see who won, and then that guy becomes the starter, and we can't really blame Dan Mullen for picking the wrong guy because the choice was made during games, right? That's kind of what happened last year. They didn't lose. They almost lost, but they didn't lose, right? So it's I feel like there's a fear there because I'd put it to you this way. I have a hard time believing that last year, Dan Mullen watched two quarterbacks practice, and he could not decide in his mind which one was better. So he didn't name one, and they both played in the first game. And then this year, Dan Mullen watched two quarterbacks in practice, cannot decide which one is better, and is going to play both of them in the first game. I just do not believe that Dan Mullen, the guy who is known for developing college quarterbacks, for having good college quarterbacks, cannot watch practice 2 years in a row and pick out a quarterback that's better than the other. I just don't believe that that's happened now 2 seasons in a row, that they're just so equal. I can almost guarantee Dan Mullen watching practice is like, all right, I think this guy's better than the other. But there's some fear in naming a starting quarterback. Now, I do think there is a potential good reason for this. Would it have actually played out in this scenario? Probably not. But there's probably some transfer portal guarding as well when you don't make these decisions. Because if you have two competent quarterbacks, if you have two guys that could realistically start, right, and you name one the starter and the other one the backup, there's a chance he's gone, right? There's a chance you lose the backup. So there might be some transfer portal guarding here as well. And I mean, based on who's eligible in college football, you could just transfer in the middle of the season and probably play at this point. But like, there's probably a little bit of transfer portal guarding too, because it's really important to have some quarterback depth. You see a quarterback get hurt. It happens every year for UNLV. Having a good backup coming in is very, very important. So I do think there is potentially a good strategic reason for doing this, even if it looks kind of odd that Dan Mullen can't decide which quarterback is actually better. And then, I don't know, it's obviously not happening here, but Sluka probably did happen with. There's probably some promises of playing time, right? Or expectations, maybe not handshake promises, but there's probably some form of, hey, if you transfer here, we're going to start you, right? That could lead you to starting a guy even though his backup is better, and you might realize, oh, Malik Williams is better than Sluka. But Sluka's only here because we promised him playing time and a couple $100,000 that we didn't give him. And so we're going to have to start him because otherwise this will be a mess. Turn out to be a mess anyways. So there's a lot of things that play into different scenarios. It's just wild to me that it happens to UNLV over and over where we don't know who the starting quarterback is or who's the best quarterback on the team to start the season. And it's been different coaches, obviously different quarterbacks. It's just insane. It happened when they were terrible with Tony Sanchez and Marcus Arroyo. It's happened when they've been good with Barry Odom and now Dan Mullen. It's just nonstop. It just doesn't end with, hey, we can't figure out the quarterback position. It's going to be a toss-up going into week 1. Or if we do think we have it figured out, we were wrong every time. Now, the more important question, does it matter against Memphis, right? That's the key here. If UNLV can play both quarterbacks and one of them plays well and he's the starter and becomes the starter and they beat Memphis, great, right? Now you've got your starting quarterback going into week 2 and you didn't lose a game, right? But here's the difference. Last year, UNLV played musical chairs at quarterback to start the season, but they were playing an FCS team in Idaho State. They almost lost that game to Idaho State. They tried, right? But they still won the game. Play at Memphis. Like, not only is Memphis capable of beating UNLV, but this is a game that could have a huge impact on who makes the college football playoff at the end of the year. Like, UNLV needs to win this game, right? It's a very important game for their resume. And if you're screwing around at the quarterback position because Dan Mullen can't make a decision on who's actually better, and you end up losing in part because of that, like, that just seems foolish to even put yourself in that scenario, right? Last year, they were down 10-0 to Idaho State. Like, UNLV had a great season. They were down 10-0 to Idaho State. They came back to win by 7. They had to score the last 2 touchdowns of that game to beat Idaho State. If you go down 10-0 while Mullen can't decide who the quarterback is to Memphis, are you coming back to win that game? So how the offense looks early, or however they split this up, but assuming we get a possession for Calandria, a possession for Arnold, a possession for Orgy, or maybe 3 and 3, I don't know. However he does it, if they look bad while switching quarterbacks and fall behind and then end up losing, this is absolutely going to be something you point back to and say, what the hell is Dan Mullen doing? right? Like, well, why can't you decide on who the quarterback is? It's just, I don't know. I just think it's foolish. And I know Memphis hasn't, I don't think they have named their starting quarterback either. Like college coaches do dumb things all the time. They always do. They love to. So it's just bizarre that UNLV does this every single year. Now, the wildest part of this game and this weekend is that UNLV is playing the biggest game of the first weekend of the college football season. I know it's week 0. Most teams aren't actually playing. Yes, there are a couple of power conference matchups. North Carolina plays. Is Bill Belichick still a failure? Probably. Hawaii plays Stanford, and that game, by the way, could have really big impact for the college football playoff. If Hawaii is actually good, could help UNLV a lot as well. If Hawaii is able to beat Stanford and then UNLV turns out to beat Hawaii the next week, could be very helpful. So that's an important game too, especially for UNLV and the group of 6. But like, this game is on Fox. Like, this is not, what's the Mountain West Network this year? This is not Find CBS Sports Network or the CW. Like, this game is on Fox. And it's UNLV playing on the first weekend of the season in the biggest game. Like, it's wild. Like, UNLV's not only been winning more football games than it pretty much ever has. Sorry, Harvey Hyde. But they're making themselves, like, relevant, right? They played Boise State on a Friday night in what was kind of a playoff, play-in type of game. Like, getting that attention, it was a bad night. They didn't win the game. But getting that attention is pretty great. So, and by the way, the rest of UNLV's schedule, like the Hawaii game's probably going to be big, right? Cal is going to be a big one. New Mexico, like there's going to be other big games on the schedule, bigger than this one because you'll have Mountain West championship implications and stuff like that. But every other week of the season, there's going to be bigger games, bigger teams playing where UNLV won't get the same sort of limelight. Because here's the thing. This is why college football is so great. But this is what makes this first week fun. UNLV beats Memphis. There will be real conversations, right? Probably on like ESPN. There will be real conversations about UNLV going to the playoff. If they beat Memphis, UNLV will most likely have the most important win of the first week of the season. And they're, have the projections where they could go 10-2 or better and actually be a playoff threat, right? The positive overreaction will be great. It'll be UNLV knocks off Memphis. Can Dan Mullen get them to the college football playoff? That'll be the conversation. And Boise State will not have played a game, so there will be nothing for Boise State to point to about Boise State. The entire American Athletic Conference will be shut up for a moment because UNLV will have beaten Memphis, one of their teams, right? Like, if they win this game, that's going to be the positive overreaction. And on the flip side, again, it's why I love the sport. If UNLV loses to Memphis, season's over. Pack it up. Forget about the playoffs. Dan Mullen's not the right guy. Defense didn't get any better. They're all terrible, right? Like, that's going to be the overreaction, and it'll be phenomenal. But I do think there's a couple of important things to point out here to tame the overreaction, which I will probably still end up doing. The first one is Memphis is not projected to be one of the best group of 6 teams. Maybe they still end up there, but they're not projected to be one of the best group of 6 teams. All the like odds or analytics that rank teams, Memphis is not sort of in that top 5 picture. They're tier 2 or so of group of 6 teams. Like, they could do it, but they've got a whole new coaching staff. Their roster's completely new. Like, yeah, like I think even Dan Mullen said this week that they got it's a whole new team. They're not even watching. There's no Memphis film to watch because it's nobody's there from last year. So Memphis, like UNLV beating Memphis is probably not at the end of the year going to be, both of these teams are 10-2. Memphis is probably going to be like 8-5 or 8-4. But that's still good. I mean, that's still a good thing. And they're not going to be awful. So if you are to win this game, it's not, oh my God, UNLV just picked up a massive resume win. It's more like UNLV picked up a solid win and got to show people in the first week of the season that they're a legitimate contender to go to the playoff. On the flip side, if they lose, Memphis isn't awful. Memphis is not horrific. They're, again, probably like an 8-4 American team. You can afford that loss, right? Like UNLV does not have to go undefeated to go to, most likely, does not have to go undefeated to go to the playoff. Maybe they will, but most likely they can afford a loss. Now, you lose to Memphis, you probably can't lose another one, maybe one more along the way. But losing to Memphis is still, an acceptable type of loss when we're going to be comparing UNLV to other group of 6 teams. So it's not the end of the world, and it's not the greatest thing that's ever happened if UNLV loses or wins this weekend, but it will be a lot of fun. And the reaction to it, I can't wait. It's great. College football's almost here. So it's phenomenal, and UNLV actually matters. It's fun. It's what I've been asking for UNLV basketball to actually matter at some point, which brings us to something that could make UNLV basketball actually matter. AJ Storr is transferring to UNLV. He was at Ole Miss last season. If you're unaware, I went to Ole Miss. He was at Ole Miss last season and is now transferring into UNLV because he's got another year of eligibility. I'll give you the Evan Maya transfer portal ranking, had him as the 249th best player. For comparison, last year, Kamani Hamilton was 84th and Howie Fleming was 359th. So AJ Storr, based on this ranking, is closer to Howie Fleming than he was to Kamani Hamilton. I don't agree with that, and I'll tell you why here. So last year, AJ Storr was at 15.5 points per game, led Ole Miss in scoring. He's a high usage, low efficiency. Low's probably selling him a little short, but he doesn't have great efficiency as a player, right? If you take offensive rating, which is an efficiency metric, of the top 47 SEC players last year by usage rate, he was 40th out of those 47 guys in offensive rating. So his efficiency is not great. It's not horrendous, right? It has not been horrendous in his career, but it's not good. The three-point shooting, because I always like to mention this, 35% from three last year, 34% in his career, and he's taken 440 total three-point attempts. That is a big sample size. He is a good three-point shooter. He can shoot threes. UNLV actually has a guy that you can, it's not he only took 21 threes last year. We're not pulling small sample sizes. We're not talking about a guy who shot 28%, and it's like, well, maybe he could be better. He has done it for 4 years at a high level, at a high volume, knock down threes. So he's played at 4 different schools already in his career. St. John's to Wisconsin to Kansas to Ole Miss. He's never won an NCAA tournament game, by the way, which sucks for him because he was a 5 seed at Wisconsin. He went to Kansas, and they both got bounced in the first round. But Wisconsin, the 1 year that he was there, he was their leading scorer, and they were a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Yes, they lost their first game, but they were a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. That might be the highest level accomplishment a UNLV transfer has had in decades. I mean, he was on a legit high major program. They got a 5 seed. Was their leading scorer for the entire season. Like that's UNLV doesn't get those players. UNLV doesn't get guys that led power. He's led 2, Wisconsin and Ole Miss. He's led 2 different power conference teams in scoring. UNLV does not land those players. Like we have been seeing for years, UNLV lands guys that are on the end of the rotation, the end of the bench for these power conferences. They might get a guy from like Kamani Hamilton was at, High Point, right? Like you come up from a lower level that has a bunch of points. They've got some of those guys coming in. But UNLV does not land guys that led Wisconsin in scoring. They don't land guys that lead Ole Miss in scoring. Like that's huge. And by the way, according to Bart Torvik, I've said this before, defensive metrics for individual players, very hard to do in basketball, but Bart Torvik has him as an above average, if not pretty good defender throughout his career. So he shouldn't be a bad defender, I think is the best way to look at that. There are some inefficiency issues, right? He's not been an efficient scorer. He's at his 5th school in 5 years. That's probably not great, but should it matter for a 1-year player at UNLV? But overall, I think the biggest key with AJ Storr at UNLV is that he raises the ceiling. Because when we talk about UNLV basketball, when I talk about them, the main theme of any UNLV basketball conversation should be about the NCAA tournament. That is where they need to go. Just get back there. It's been over a decade. They haven't been since I moved here, right? Just get back there. And AJ Storr raises the ceiling to a much higher level that could actually allow UNLV to go to the NCAA tournament, right? The non-conference schedule is going to give you a few opportunities. It's not the greatest, but it'll give you a few opportunities. But the real key here is that AJ Storr could be the best player in the Mountain West. Will he actually be? I don't know. But there is a real chance that we get to the end of the basketball season and AJ Storr is the Mountain West Player of the Year. Again, we're talking about a guy who has led 2 different high major programs in scoring. He's done that twice at 2 different places. This is going to be the worst level of basketball that AJ Storr has played in since he was in high school. There is a real chance he's the best player in the Mountain West. And if you have the best player in every game that you play in conference play, you've got a chance to win every single game. Grand Canyon, New Mexico, maybe Nevada, like they're going to be in the mix. They'll be top 100 teams, but UNLV might have the best player in the conference. Maybe the efficiency's bad. Maybe he's really inefficient even at a lower level, and that dings him, right? Maybe Josh Pastner and the coaching staff can't figure it out. They can't figure out how to work AJ Storr or get it to work with the offense, whatever. Maybe there's problems. There's absolutely legitimate chances there's problems, or he's just not good enough, or he's just too inefficient to actually make it work at the NCAA tournament level the UNLV needs. But he raises the ceiling because he could be the best player in the conference. I'm assuming he's going to be UNLV's leading scorer. Again, he's led 2 high major programs in scoring. It'd be kind of shocking if he's not, right? There is a chance he's the best player in the conference and allows UNLV to run up a gaudy Mountain West record, right? Have a year where you lose like 3 Mountain West games. The conference is worse than it's ever been. It's more probable now that you only lose 3 games than it had been last year or the year before. Run up a gaudy Mountain West record where you only lose 3 games. And because he raises your ceiling, when UNLV plays Kansas in the Players Era tournament, they're probably not going to beat Kansas, right? But they have more of a shot now with AJ Storr than they did before they had AJ Storr. And more importantly, the next games after that, when it's Auburn or West Virginia, or the Rutgers, Notre Dame, Houston, or Florida team that they would play in the final game in theory, UNLV will have a chance to beat Auburn and West Virginia. UNLV will have a chance to beat Rutgers or Notre Dame in that third game. If it's Houston or Florida, probably not. But UNLV, because the ceiling is raised, AJ Storr, he's done it in his career, has games where he scores 26 points against a top 50 opponent, leads the team in scoring, and they win the game. He has done that multiple times in his career for different programs. So when they play an Auburn or West Virginia, and those teams are, 34th in KenPom, right? They're NCAA tournament level teams, but 9 seed level teams. AJ Storr can be good enough that you win those games because he's the best player on the floor. Might not be the best player overall between the 2 rosters, but in that game, he's good enough to be the best player on the floor. He raises the ceiling of this team to where if he's good, if he takes advantage of playing in a lower level, he could be the best player in the conference and give you a shot against the better teams on your non-conference schedule. That's why I think you should be excited about it. Now, is UNLV going to go to the NCAA tournament? Right? Again, that's the main theme of any conversation you have about UNLV basketball. Are they going to go to the NCAA tournament? Because it's kind of all that matters. You can't say that right now, right? That's not something I think you can say because this roster is so new. We're going to have to see how all of these pieces fit together. So it's hard to say that, but I do think it's fair. And this is the point I've made all the time, but I do think it's fair that we get to February and they're at least on the bubble. We get to February and there's at least a chance UNLV goes to the NCAA tournament, right? I think that's fair and that's the expectation. That we get to February and AJ Storr is good enough that we're talking about UNLV in the bubble. And if they lose a few extra Mountain West games, and a lot of those are going to be bad losses, right? Knocks you out of at-large contention, but we should be talking about the bubble. If not more. But I genuinely think the AJ Storr addition is huge for UNLV just because of what it does to their potential outcomes on the high end. The ceiling is much, much higher for UNLV now than it was last week. And it's because AJ Storr should be the leading scorer on this team, could be the leading scorer in the entire Mountain West. But this has been Technically Correct. I am Tyler Bischoff. Thank you so much.